What you're about to hear defies every law of nature, every principle of medicine, and every boundary of human understanding. In 1997, in a small hospital in rural Montana, doctors witnessed something that should have been impossible. A woman named Elena Vasquez gave birth to a child who possessed her complete memories, her personality, and her most intimate secrets. But this is only where our story begins, because what happened next would challenge everything we know about consciousness, identity, and the very nature of existence itself. I've spent months investigating this case, speaking with the few surviving witnesses, examining medical records that were sealed for decades, and uncovering a truth so disturbing that it was buried by authorities. Tonight, I'm sharing everything I discovered about the woman who gave birth to herself. But before we dive into this medical nightmare, I need to warn you. What you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. Some knowledge, once gained, cannot be forgotten. Are you ready to learn the truth about Elena Vasquez? Elena Vasquez was 32 years old when she arrived at St. Mary's Hospital on October 13, 1997. She was alone, heavily pregnant, and, according to the intake nurse, speaking in what seemed like multiple languages simultaneously. But here's the first impossible detail. Elena had no medical history, no previous hospital visits, no doctor's appointments, no insurance records. It was as if she had materialized from nowhere, carrying a child that defied explanation. Dr. Sarah Chen was the attending physician that night. In our interview, she told me she still has nightmares about what she witnessed. Elena's pregnancy was progressing normally until the moment labor began. That's when the screaming started. Not the typical sounds of childbirth, but something else entirely. Elena was screaming in perfect Portuguese, then French, then what sounded like ancient Latin. Languages she had never learned, words that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her consciousness. The delivery room became a place of chaos. Elena's vital signs were fluctuating wildly, her blood pressure reaching levels that should have killed her, yet she remained conscious and aware. More disturbing still, she was having conversations with her unborn child. The fetal heart monitor picked up sounds that medical science couldn't explain. It wasn't just a heartbeat. It was patterns, rhythms that almost resembled speech. Dr. Chen made the decision to perform an emergency cesarean section. As she made the first incision, Elena suddenly stopped screaming. She looked directly at the doctor and said, in perfect English, "She remembers everything. Every moment of my life, every thought, every secret. She is me, but she is also more than me." The baby girl was born at exactly 11:59 p.m. She didn't cry. She opened her eyes immediately and stared at the medical team with an intelligence that no newborn should possess. Nurse Patricia Williams, who was present during the birth, told me that the baby's first action was to reach for Elena's hand. When their skin touched, Elena whispered, "Welcome back." Over the following days, the impossible became undeniable. The baby, whom Elena named Esperanza, displayed behaviors that defied medical explanation. She would stop crying only when Elena spoke about specific memories from her childhood in Mexico. She would become agitated when Elena mentioned her abusive ex-husband, as if she shared the trauma. Most disturbing of all, Esperanza would sometimes move her lips in perfect synchronization with Elena's words, as if she was silently speaking along. Dr. Chen ordered extensive testing. The DNA results were the first shock. Esperanza was genetically identical to Elena in ways that suggested she wasn't just her daughter, but her clone. But cloning couldn't explain the shared memories, the synchronized behaviors, or the mysterious connection between mother and child. The hospital's psychiatrist, Dr. Michael Torres, documented over 40 hours of interaction between Elena and Esperanza. His notes, which I obtained through a Freedom of Information request, described scenes that border on the supernatural. Elena would tell stories about her past, and baby Esperanza would react with facial expressions and gestures that seemed to indicate not just understanding, but recognition. When Elena cried about losing her mother at age 7, Esperanza's eyes would well up with tears. But the most chilling discovery came when Alina was sleeping. Security cameras captured Esperanza, only days old, lying perfectly still in her crib. But her eyes were moving rapidly, as if she was dreaming. When doctors analyzed her brainwaves during these episodes, they found patterns identical to Elena's REM sleep cycles from the previous night. The baby was dreaming Elena's dreams. 3 weeks after the birth, Elena began experiencing what she called the sharing. She would suddenly know things she had never learned, possess skills she had never developed. She started speaking fluent Mandarin Chinese. Though she had never studied the language, she could play piano pieces she had never heard before. Most unnervingly, she began having memories that felt foreign yet familiar, as if they belonged to someone else, but were somehow also hers. The truth began to emerge during Elena's sessions. With Dr. Torres under hypnosis, she revealed that she had been part of a secret government experiment in 1996. The project, codenamed Mirrorbirth, was investigating the possibility of transferring consciousness between individuals. Elena had volunteered for the program after her mother's death, desperate to find a way to preserve human consciousness beyond death. The experiment involved implanting Elena with what researchers called a consciousness seed, a theoretical construct designed to create a perfect replica of her mind within her unborn child. The project was shut down after preliminary tests showed signs of success, but Elena was already pregnant. The researchers disappeared, leaving her with no medical support and no understanding of what was growing inside. Her Dr. Chen discovered that Elena's medical records had been classified at the highest levels of government. Security. Phone calls to federal agencies were met with threats and warnings to cease all investigation. The hospital was ordered to destroy all documentation related to the case, and staff members were required to sign non-disclosure agreements under penalty of imprisonment. But the story takes an even darker turn. As Esperanza grew, the line between mother and daughter began to blur in ways that terrified everyone involved. Elena would sometimes refer to herself in the third person, as if she was observing her own life from the outside. Esperanza would cry when Elena felt pain, laugh when Elena experienced joy, and most disturbingly, speak Elena's thoughts aloud before Elena herself was aware of them. The final documented interaction between Elena and Esperanza occurred when the baby was 2 months old. Security footage shows Elena sitting beside the crib, having what appears to be a normal conversation with her infant daughter. But when audio enhancement technology was applied to the recording, investigators discovered that both voices were coming from Elena. She was somehow speaking for both herself and her daughter simultaneously, conducting a dialogue between two versions of the same consciousness. On December 20th, 1997, Elena Vasquez vanished from St. Mary's Hospital. She took Esperanza with her, leaving behind only a note that read, "We understand now. There is no separation between us. We are becoming what we were always meant to be. Do not look for us. We are everywhere and nowhere." Hospital security footage from that night shows Elena walking through the halls carrying her baby, but something is wrong with the image. Sometimes it appears to be one woman carrying a child. Other times it looks like two identical women walking side by side. The footage is so distorted that experts cannot determine what actually happened. The official investigation concluded that Elena Vasquez suffered a complete psychotic breakdown and likely harmed herself and her child. But Dr. Chen told me something different. In our final interview, she believes that the experiment succeeded too well, creating not just a copy of Elena's consciousness, but a merger of two identical minds occupying separate bodies. 17 years have passed since Elena and Esperanza disappeared. There have been sightings, women who appear to be the same person at different ages, speaking in perfect unison, displaying impossible knowledge of strangers' private lives. Some witnesses claim to have seen them in remote areas of Montana, others in small towns across the American Southwest. Each encounter is brief, leaving behind only questions and a profound sense of unease. The government files on Project Mirrorbirth remain classified. Dr. Chen left medicine and now refuses to discuss the case publicly. The few surviving staff members from St. Mary's Hospital have either died under mysterious circumstances or disappeared entirely. It's as if someone or something is systematically erasing all evidence of what happened. But here's what keeps me awake at night. What if the experiment didn't create two identical consciousnesses? What if it created something else entirely? Something that exists beyond the boundaries of individual identity, beyond the limitations of a single human body? What if Alina didn't give birth to herself, but to something that was always there, waiting to emerge? The medical records I obtained suggest that Alina's consciousness didn't transfer to her daughter. Instead, it expanded, creating a single awareness that could exist in multiple bodies simultaneously. If this is true, then Alina and Esperanza aren't missing. They're evolving, becoming something that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about what it means to be human. Tonight, as you lie in bed thinking about this story, consider this final thought. Consciousness is the one aspect of human existence that we understand least. We don't know where it comes from, how it works, or where it goes when we die. Alina Vasquez may have discovered something that science isn't ready to accept, that consciousness isn't bound by the physical limitations we assume define it. Somewhere, in the darkness beyond our understanding, Alina continues to exist. Not as one person, but as something more complex, more frightening, and more beautiful than anything we've ever imagined. She gave birth to herself, not once, but continuously, creating new versions of her consciousness with each passing moment. The question isn't whether Alina Vasquez is still alive. The question is, how many versions of her exist now, and what happens when she decides it's time for the rest of us to join her in understanding the true nature of human consciousness. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Some truths are too dangerous to fully comprehend. But once you've heard Alina's story, you'll never look at pregnancy, birth, or the nature of human identity the same way again. The woman who gave birth to herself is still out there, still becoming, still challenging everything we thought we knew about the boundaries between self and other, between mother and child, between one consciousness and another. Sweet dreams.